Welcome, crafties. We are back with more of our Christopher Watts review of the book Letters from Christopher by Sherilyn Cato. If you're new here, we do have a lot of new subscribers, so welcome. Please join the conversation in the comments section. My name's Jennifer. I'm a former journalist, a mom of two, a recent breast cancer survivor, and a crafter, and I talk true crime. So today we're going to get right into it. I want to let you know we do not monetize on this channel. Some people in the comments section were coming at us saying it's horrible that you are monetizing off of this tragedy. We cover a lot of crime cases. This is just one of them. And we're actually just doing a book review on the Sherilyn Cato book, Letters to Christopher. I do not own the rights to this book, and I respect copyright law, so what I'm going to do is play a couple clips for you that I thought were interesting in this book, chapter by chapter, and then we're going to discuss. So, getting into chapter 23, let's get started. Looking back at my notes, this whole chapter is about Chris looking back on his life and what recently happened. Chris tells Sherilyn Cato how he felt that he and Shanann were not soulmates, which makes you wonder, does he think Nicole Kessinger is his soulmate? He doesn't say anything in the book about that, but he does confess his love for her again in another chapter. But let's listen to what he has to say about his marriage to Shanann.
I took my own life. I lost my family, my house, my job, my friends, everything that meant anything to me. I know now Shanann and I were not meant for each other. I'm afraid if I tell you my thoughts, you might feel I'm blaming Shanann for what happened, but I'm not at all. We were just two completely different people, each with our own views and personalities. Mostly opposites attract and do well. That wasn't the case with us. When I really think about it, I wasn't true to myself when I first met her. Shanann was so beautiful, I remember. I just couldn't relax and be myself around her. She was confident and a real presence. I am quiet and I like the background. I tried probably too hard and always wanted to impress her, except on our first date. We were meeting at a theater, and I had no idea what kind. I was thinking of a movie theater, so I dressed in sandals, shorts, and a t-shirt. I felt like an idiot when I showed up, and she was dressed to the nines, looking so beautiful. And here I was, dressed for a night of relaxation.
Note to people, when you go out on a first date, it may be a good idea to check the atmosphere of the place you're going so you can be properly dressed and know what to expect. But guess Chris doesn't think that way.
I felt so bad and figured she wouldn't give me a second date. But it turned out to be a great evening, and it gave us something we could always remember and laugh about. We dated for over a year, and then we got engaged.
It goes back and forth, victim blaming, and then going back to being a narcissist and saying she was terrible to me, I didn't get to make any decisions. Well, then you should have left the relationship, Chris, or spoke up. You don't annihilate your family. So he does talk about his wedding day being the best day of his life, which I found very ironic. Listen to him.
We had a beautiful wedding, and no bride could have been more gorgeous than Shanann. Life settled into a routine, and some days were mundane, like anyone else's life. We had the girls, and they were blessings to our lives. Everything revolved around them, and we were giving them the best life possible. When I think back on what I had, I still cannot believe I lost my whole family. A family I had wanted my whole life. It's the most horrible thing I could ever do. And I'm still saying, it was not my mind or my hands that did this to them.
Here we go.
But the hands and mind being controlled by something evil. I hope people will believe me. Many things. Made my
Later
life a lot less than perfect. At least
in this chapter, not this chapter, sorry, later in another chapter, I'm working backwards in this book, and he discusses pretty much being possessed by a dark spirit. We will get into that one for the folks who are into the paranormal, superstitious. But, you know, I don't even know what to think of it, but.
thought. Although, if you were to ask me now, I might have a different story about that. Shanann had created a life for us that looked on the outside to be perfect. It almost was. Except for me. I needed to rise to the occasion and be a man, and to help my wife see she could not control everything, and everyone around her. If she couldn't come to terms with that, then we split. I was not able to confront the situation, though, as I could not go to Shanann and tell her my feelings. I did not need or want such a big house. I was raised in a small ranch home, and we were perfectly happy, but not house poor. Life was much easier for my parents than it was for me.
So people are really having a field day in my comment section about Chris's family, mainly his mother. The chapter, I believe it's like 15, 16. We'll get there. Also in this chapter, Chris talks about the friend who I will not name that they lived with when they first moved to Colorado from North Carolina while their house was being built. He told Sherilyn in an interview, remember, Sherilyn is writing letters back and forth and then eventually visits him for the book as well. He told Sherilyn that he doesn't know why, but Shanann and this friend eventually had a falling out. He knows that they had this falling out and never spoke to each other again, never asked questions about what happened. We can only speculate that maybe it had something to do with her nannying for kids. We don't really know. But I did think that that was interesting. He went back to that because it's almost like he's trying to paint a picture, right? That like, Shanann wasn't a good wife. Shanann wasn't a good friend. Look, someone doesn't talk to her. I mean, we all have friends that we've cut ties with, right? It just happens. We grow apart. No excuse, Chris. No excuse. In chapter 23, Chris also talks about how he started to grow resentment for Shanann because he wanted to get into working out. And he, in fact, told Nicole Kessinger that this was one of the reasons that he wanted a divorce.
I started getting up at 4 a.m. to work out. I used to weigh 245, but I lost down to around 170. Shanann used to get dressed in running clothes and then asked me to take pictures of her so it could look like she ran with me. I remember how we would laugh about it. Some evenings I would run after I put the girls down at night, but Shanann did not like for me to do that either. I told Nikki this was one of the reasons I wanted to separate. We obviously were headed in separate directions, or at least that is one of the things I told Nikki. Now when I say that, I can see how shallow it sounds. I told everyone we had been talking about separating for the last few months, but honestly, we were not. Shanann was blindsided by all of what was happening. Like if I built walls, I wouldn't have to explain anything to Shanann. I did sleep in the basement sometime, but only at the very end, after we got back from North Carolina. We went to San Diego on June 22nd and came home on June 26th. Shanann and the girls left that afternoon, and my life then quickly spiraled out of control.
So we all remember the part about Christopher spending a lot of time in the basement. Well, he had a gym down there, and he was talking to Kessinger down in the basement. We know he didn't have a backbone, so if anything, he probably would tell Shanann, hey, my back hurts. I'm going to go sleep downstairs in the basement. The mattress is better for me. Nothing along the lines of, hey, I need some space from you. I don't want to be around you. So looking at my notes, one part in this chapter that was really interesting to me is Chris starts to describe how he would feel resentful towards Shanann when she would keep the girls away from his parents. But then he also starts to talk about that morning and how he, went into this rage because Shanann said, "You won't see your kids ever again." He contradicts himself because in the interview in Wisconsin, he said he didn't feel rage. And in fact, in an earlier chapter, he told Sherilyn Cadle he had been plotting these murders for weeks. So that's premeditated. He was fantasizing. He used the word fantasizing about it.
Same. I felt our marriage was too far gone. I was also tired of how controlling she was. And I was especially tired of her keeping me and the girls from my family. There wasn't a good reason for me to be kept from them. In the morning, that's probably the main thing I was so angry with Shanann about. Being told she would keep the girls from me. When Shanann would get so upset with my family, it worked on me. The drama from it was constant, and I regret saying some horrible things to my parents. They never fought back. They lived so far away and were honestly willing to help whenever we needed anything. I regret I never tried to remain close to them, mostly because I was trying to do what would make Shanann happy at the time. But I didn't want to be told I could not see them either. It always seemed when she would have problems with my mom and sister, she would then want me.
Well, Chris, you have the support of your family now. I think you're probably closer than ever. And, I'm not saying that a mother should turn her back on her child. We're always going to love our children unconditionally. But I am bothered by the fact during her victim impact statement at court, she didn't even express any emotion when talking about her grandchildren. I don't know if she is disassociated or what is going on, but I think we all kind of watched that and we're like, what? You just lost your grandchildren. Chris also in this chapter talks more about Nikki, and we shouldn't paint her as a villain, and she is a victim too in all of this. If you're one of the regulars on Watts Island, that's for a whole nother video. But yes, he talks more about his love for Nikki. We're going to end with a clip that I thought was interesting about a woman who made a decision to write Christopher. I believe he was still in Colorado at the time. And tell him about a dream she had. Now, if you're into supernatural and premonitions, this is pretty cool. That this woman had this dream. If any of you have had an experience of a premonition, please let's share them in the comment section. I love stuff like that. Or gut feelings. Maybe we'll do a video about Sandy having her premonition the morning of the incident when she woke up. She talked about that on Dr. Phil. But have a listen to this. And I kind of love how he talks about he tried to write the woman back, but she wouldn't respond. So clearly this woman didn't want to be pen pals with Chris Watts, but she felt pushed and called to deliver this message. Maybe in the dream, it's about Bella. Maybe Bella was like, please tell my dad this. And the woman felt like she had to do something. So have a listen.
After I was moved to Wisconsin, I received a letter from a woman I did not know.
Okay,
and she
so
said
Wisconsin.
she did not know me. She had heard something briefly on the television about the case, but said she really did not pay much attention to it, so she was not at all familiar with the story. She wrote to me about a dream she had a couple of nights before. In her dream, she was walking past a room and saw a baby bed in the room and could hear a small child crying. She walked into the room and noticed something was dripping out from under the baby's bed. It was dripping onto the floor. She walked over to the bed, looked, and saw a little girl covered in liquid. It was all over the child. So she picked up the little girl, who said, "I am having so much fun up here." The woman realized the small child was covered in gas. She woke up and was very disturbed by the dream. She remembered something about gasoline from the news. She did not remember my name or anything else pertaining to the case, so she Googled it and found the story. When she saw pictures of my family, she told me she realized that the little girl in her dream was Bella. She said she was writing me to let me know they are in heaven, and I did not need to keep beating myself up over what happened. I wrote her back, but I never heard from her again. I appreciated her writing to me about the dream, but I already know without any doubt that Bella is in heaven. As far as beating myself up, that will happen for as long as I live.
As it should, Christopher. Well, that is a wrap on chapter 23. I am going to continue my review on this book. What I'm going to do is pin it in the comments section. If any of you are interested, please support. I consider a writer an artist as well, so please support Sherilyn Cadle. If you're finding this book interesting, I did reach out to her for an interview. I mainly want to know how she mentally was affected by writing this book. I have not heard back from her. She also did have a copyright issue come up with the book about making a part of it up, but we'll probably do another video on that. Regardless, the interview and the letters are interesting. It doesn't debunk that, he didn't write these letters. Maybe she exaggerated some other part of the book, but we'll do a different video on that. So like, subscribe, and hit notifications if you want to know when I start uploading more, and have a great one.